Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Experts. I'm Dr. Meg Bouffier, and I'm coming to you clad today all in denim. Denim Day is held every year on the last Wednesday of April to support survivors of sexual assault and raise awareness about victim blaming. So I'm clad all in denim today in honor of that. So you probably know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have over 35, actually closer to 40 years of experience at NIH as an applicant, an intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now as a full-time NIH grant mentor. I've helped clients land well over $500 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions, so grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So if you're attending live and I see people are still logging in, just a reminder that you're on listen only mode. You can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. They can pertain to the topic of today's presentation or not. It's up to you. If you have a comment that you'd like to add to the conversation, feel free to put that in the chat box. If you're watching this as a recording and more people are doing so, just a reminder that today is April 30th, 2025, and everything is true to the best of our knowledge today, but you should always double check everything because boy, are things moving fast at the federal level right now. What you should be viewing in the library right now, I would hope that if you're targeting a June deadline, that you are done watching courses and are deep into the writing and editing of your research strategy, and maybe iterating your draft with a near final draft with your team members. That would be an ideal scenario. So I hope that's where you are at this point. Maybe you'll watch something like Checklist to avoid top mistakes, just to kind of run through it and make sure that you're avoiding any of that. Any NIH updates? Oh my, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin. So let's just leave it alone for now. And if anybody has any questions about any NIH updates, let me know. So this week, our featured guest is Dr. Natasha Goldman. We've had Natasha on the channel before. I'm delighted to have her back. And the topic of today's presentation is From Federal to Foundation Grants, the 5 Essential Elements of Every Grant Application. So Natasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Meg, for inviting me. It's really an honor to be with you all here today and to share what I know about moving from federal to foundation grants. These are crazy, crazy times, and you really need every tool and every trick in your pocket. So I'm here, I hope, to help you get through this messy situation and get your projects funded from NIH or possibly from other funders as well. So my name is Natasha Goldman. I'm president of Viston Inc. We're a grants consulting firm. We basically do all grants except NIH. So Meg is your NIH pro. um, but we've won NSF, USDA, Department of Labor, National Endowment for the Humanities, National Endowment for the Arts, National Science Foundation, Department of Education. We haven't done NASA, still waiting to do that one. So lots of good things in our futures as well. A little bit of background about me. Um, why is there a gas station photo? Yeah, well, let me tell you. So my very first job in college was as an intern in a grants office and started helping people find grants as a student already. I then went on to the academic track and was an academic and art historian for 17 years. I am published with an academic press. I have 2 NEH awards under my belt for my own research, and I've worked in a wide variety of institutions from large Hispanic serving public universities to very small elite private colleges. But I do have a backward CV because my 19-year-old self kicks me in the shins. My husband was also an art historian. I ended up following him. He landed at Harvard. I say I made a good decision and placed my bets correctly. But because I have a backward CV, I found myself to be very frustrated. So one day in Brunswick, Maine, where I was teaching as an adjunct, started as an assistant professor and became an adjunct, at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, I was at the gas station and I ran into a woman who used to be in the Office of Sponsored Research at Bowdoin College who said, well, I left. I'm now working for a firm in DC. How are you doing? And I say, it's really frustrating trying to get my book done, etc. And she said, well, why don't you come and do contract rating for us? And thus the professional grant writing work began. We now have 80 million in wins. I went out on my own in 2018, and we are a Small Business Administration awardee. So lots of good stories came out of that serendipitous conversation at the gas station. So the first thing to realize that we always tell our clients, and our clients, by the way, are institutions of higher education, hospitals, municipalities, and small nonprofits. So a range of different kinds of clients. The first thing to realize is that any project is fundable as long as you know what we call the WHA. I know it's hard to say. You can practice it. WHA. It's the what, why, how, who, and how much. And this is the formula that we use. Whether we are writing an award like a $24 million EDA grant, which we won for the city of Boston, or a $4,000 grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield, we use the same formula, the what, why, how, who, and how much. We find it's really useful, and so I'm here to share it with you in the hopes that you can use it to translate your NIH projects into potential foundation applications. So let's talk about these 5 categories. And feel free to pop a question in the Q&A. Riley will flag me and let me know if there's a question. So your what is explain what you currently do and your project and goals that you want to achieve with your grant funding. Also define your target audience. Your why, you want to explain the problem that you're trying to solve, but you also in your why want to explain your successes. You want to be able to say, we've got this problem that we want to solve. That's why we need the funding. We've also done some really great stuff, and that's going to prove why we are a good candidate for this funding, and always use data and evidence-based research to support what you are trying to say. Your how section is the nuts and bolts. How are you going to get the job done? What is going to happen? What experiments will run? Do people have to travel? Will they be presenting at conferences? Again, include your evidence-based research. We always put, if there's a logic model or evaluation section of your application, we always put that in the how section. Your who is the staff that your project that requires, and sometimes might also include a description of your organization. And the how much, of course, is your salary, your fringe, and all the rest. That's usually in your budget and your budget justification. Does anybody have questions so far, Riley?
There's a question in there, but it pertains to a faculty position in a case submission, not on this. So we'll answer
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. So funders tend to bury the what, why, and how, especially in RFPs. Whether it's a foundation funder or a federal funder, you do have to analyze your solicitation in order to find where these questions are. Because the questions themselves are fairly simple, right? The what, why, and how. If you can translate the more complicated questions into simple ones, you'll have a much easier job. And why do you want to do it? Because you want to win. And we really have found this to be a winning formula. So the first thing to do is try to find the signpost words in your federal project. And different RFPs will ask you in different orders. So the NSF and the PAPPG, I believe it's section 2, page 11, literally states proposers should address what they want to do, why they want to do it, how they plan to do it, and benefits accrued. One sentence. The PAPPG is the guidelines for all NSF solicitations, no matter what's on the web, for the different parts and departments of the NSF. You have to follow the PAPPG, and this is the most sentence in the entire PAPPG, which is hundreds of pages long. You really just need the sentence to begin. How much is, of course, usually reserved for budgets. Now, and we actually answer these questions in this order in NSFs. Now, NIH, I find, is a little sneakier. And again, Meg's the expert for NIH, but we have looked at a couple of, I looked at a U01 clinical trial readiness for rare neurological diseases for a client. We didn't end up pursuing it, but I did have to analyze the solicitation to figure out the what, why, how, and who so that we could help them if it came to that. So I find that there were certain signpost words in the NIH proposal for the U01. The proposed project is your what, significance or justification is your why, your strategy or methodology is your how, and your investigators are your who. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is because we want to be able to translate your NIH application into a foundation application. So it's important to be able to see where these things show up. So I'm going to show you for a minute. I always take the solicitations and convert them into Word docs so that they're a little bit more easy to manipulate. So I'm showing you the U01 clinical trial readiness right here and showing you how we analyzed it to figure out where the what, why, how, and who shows up. So significance, and this is all in the review criteria, does the project address an important problem or a critical barrier to progress in the field? That's your what, right? That was what you're doing. Is the prior research that serves as a key support for the proposed project rigorous? Well, that's a why. Do you have the backup evidence to show that it's a great project? If the project aims are achieved, how will scientific knowledge be improved? That's your why. You want to improve scientific knowledge, and so on. And so we literally go through this and we pick out where the what's and the whys are. And you can see that they're a little bit buried here. Investigators, pretty clear, that's your who. Innovation, that's your why, because you want to get funded because it's innovative. Your approach, strategy, methodology, those are signpost words. That's a how word. So understanding what they're asking you so you can easily translate it into foundation language is really important. I'll pause here now to see if there are any questions.
No, there's another question unrelated to this. So
Okay.
going.
All right. Okay, no, totally fine. Um, so moving from federal to a foundation example, and here's a Hearst Foundation application. They fund about 30% of health-related projects, so I thought it might be interesting for you all to look into. And I've pulled the prompts from the Hearst Foundation. One thing to realize if you haven't done foundation grants yet, they're a lot more simple than federal grants. So much more simple, but you've got to get to the meat of the project that you want funded very, very quickly. And so using the WOBAHA will really help you do that. Your executive summary is a mashup of your what, why, how, and who, of course. Your organizational history and purpose, that's who your org is. You want to describe your organization. They want the history, the mission, the governing structure, etc., and major accomplishments. Statement of need is your why. Remember the statement of your problem, identify the needs that the request addresses, substantiate your case with data, including detailed demographic information about the population served. Program description is a little bit of a mashup. Describe the activities is always what. Whenever in a foundation you see a question about activities, that's always a what you will engage in. Document the size and characteristics of the population as part of your what. Outline strategy and methodology. We've seen these signpost words before. Strategy, methodology, how you're going to do it is always your how section. And then how does the program enhance the existing services in the community? That's a why question. Why do you want to do it? Because you want to enhance existing services. And evaluation, again, we always like to put that in our how section. So your assessment. Is that incredible? There are only those few sections of this application. That's all it is. It is so much easier than your larger federal applications, but you do have to be able to summarize extremely quickly what you want to get to and why you want to get to it. So that's a broad overview of how you can move from a federal application to a foundation application by paying very close attention to what those foundation application prompts are. So let's see if I have another slide for you, and that's my contact information. Probably went a little too brief, was trying to keep it short, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
And I do want to let people know that Natasha and I wrote a Q&A style blog post, which is on my website, and I think the URL for it should be in the chat, along with Natasha's contact information and bio, I believe, are in there as well. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. And I'm going to, while people formulate their questions, I'm going to answer the two questions that have been typed in. Oh, there's another. Can you share your contact information one more time? So I believe it's in the chat. Let me just look. Oh, there you go. Yeah, just leave that up, Natasha, but it's also in the chat. And then there's another one related to this. With changes in federal funding, are foundations preparing for an increase in applications? That's a great question.
It's a great question. So the Mellon Foundation for the Humanities just announced that they are giving money to the state humanities councils. The feds always fund the state humanities councils, and they have canceled that funding this year. And so Mellon just stepped up. My sense is that The foundations are probably not only going to increase funding, but they're also going to increase their own capacity to handle the influx of new grant opportunities that they're putting out. So as soon as they do something like that, they're doing something totally new. All of a sudden, they're supporting state councils. Well, they haven't done that before, right? So they either have to spread their own staff thin, or they're going to bring in more staff to help them with this new work. So I think that they'll be building capacity as well as providing new opportunities, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I have to add that I keep seeing new not just new funding opportunities from existing foundations, but new players on the scene who are offering, new organizations that are offering that are not that don't typically fund biomedical research that are now funding biomedical research. So it
Yeah.
seems like there is some uptick. Of course, there's probably going to be an uptick in the number of applications too, but you know, there is, I think there is more money in the offing and more players on the scene. Here's somebody saying, "Are you able to show the what why slide in the beginning that had a sentence about each?" I'll
Yep.
also say, Natasha, are you willing to share your slides if somebody were to email you for them?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And here's another one. How much is your personal reputation, prior relationship, or prior know-how important for foundation grants than just pure science or impact or innovation?
Yeah, so this is so important. And we have developed 13 different workshops to build capacity for organizations in applying for grants. And we spend a lot of time, we spend a full workshop on relationship building with foundations. For your federal grants, they don't want a relationship, right? It's an academic endeavor. It's hardcore, dry academic writing. You need your data, you need your proof, you need your justification. The foundations are different. You're allowed to be a little bit more emotive in a foundation application. One program officer said to me, "Don't be shy to make them cry," right? You don't want to do that in a federal
No.
application, but you are allowed to do that in a foundation application. Now, it's really, really important to establish a relationship if they allow it. So, how do you know if they allow it or not? This is really important. When you go on the different foundation websites, it will either say that they do not accept unsolicited applications. That means that the foundation wants to find its own projects to fund. It doesn't want you to come to them. If it gives you information about contact, so a program officer contact, whether it's an email, a phone, or a physical address, you are allowed to contact them. If it says does not accept unsolicited and they don't give you contact information, that's a flag for you not to contact. So let's deal with the easy one first. They give you contact information. What do you do with it? Well, the first thing you want to do is be really active in social media. So you want to go to their social media accounts and post thoughtfully on the things that they're posting. Because you know as well as I do, when someone likes or comments thoughtfully on your post and you don't know them, what do? You click on the name, you go to them, right? You want the funder to go to you. You want the funder to go to your organization. So write thoughtful comments, use hashtags, draw attention to yourself in a positive, professional way that gets them to click on you and look at your site. Once you establish a relationship in that method, and they may reply to you, in which case you can connect with them and send them a message and say, "Hey, I saw your comment. Would you like to chat?" Right? You want to set up a call. That's one way to build a relationship over social media is by commenting on their posts. The other thing that you can do is make your own posts on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, whatever you're using, use the hashtags that they are using in their posts, right? Use the same kinds of words that they are using and topics and post it on your own social media. Again, you're drawing attention through those hashtags. So that's very important. Another thing that you can do is send a letter. Send an old fashioned letter, especially if you have gotten them on the phone and you've had a chat with them. Get a holiday card out there. Let them know you're having an upcoming webinar or an upcoming physical in-person event. Invite them to your events so that they can come and see what you're all about. any method that you can to draw their attention and build that relationship is really, really important. It can take a couple years. I just had a client win $1 million from Chan Zuckerberg. Well, that relationship took 2 years to build. They were in conversation for 2 years before that $1 million grant came through. So you have to give it time and don't lose confidence. A program officer from a foundation was on a webinar and said it can take up to 3 grant rounds for your project to get funded. It's not because you don't have a good project. It might be that there's some weaknesses in your application, but it's not because you don't have a good project. It's because they have so many applications. So keep applying. See a rejection almost as a win, because if you get a rejection, it means you're playing the grants game. If you're not getting a rejection letter, you're not playing the grants game. So keep at it with those foundation applications. Apply at least for 3 cycles. And you might also be very lucky and get some program officer feedback on your application. Did that answer your
Natasha,
question?
Natasha, we have three more related to your presentation and two not related and one that
Okay.
was emailed. So I'm
Okay.
going to try to run through these and we can run a little late if that's okay with you.
Sure.
One question, I'll do all the ones related to you. Oh, and we just got another one too. Another one is, are foundation grants more focused on project costs versus PI salary support compared to NIH funding?
Yeah. That's a really, really good question. So foundations tend to not like to fund salary because of the sustainability question over time. So a portion of salary, sure, for a particular project, absolutely. But usually they want to see program. Some of them say operating expenses. Just read very carefully. If it's operating expenses that include salary, I just wouldn't put a full salary for someone in there because it's not clear how you'll be able to cover that salary in the future. Generally, you want to show a percent of salary going to your foundation application budgets.
Okay. And there's three more related to this topic because we
Mhm.
just got another. Two of them are very topic specific. Um,
Okay.
could you advise whether disability and rehab research projects DRRP program under ACL.gov and National Institute on Disability, Independent Living and Rehab Research, NIDILRR, is still requesting for proposals for funding?
That's I off the top of my head, no, I would have to go and look. But usually it's pretty easy if you go to those sites. For government, what I'm seeing for government websites right now, if it says that it's no longer available or archived, it means it's not active and it's likely not going to be active. Whereas, accepting solicitations are closed. Closed generally means it will open. So I
Okay.
don't have more specific answers for those particular solicitations,
And I
unfortunately.
suspect here's another one that's probably going to be like that too. Are you aware of any foundations that support computational biology centric proposals?
So what I would say is get yourself on those foundation subscription databases.
Like pivot. Yeah.
Instrumental, foundation search, they all cost money, but you do your search, you put in your priorities and your keywords, and those are very robust foundation search mechanisms, and that's how I would go about finding those. You can also use AI, use
Now,
Copilot
I'll
or
I'll just pause. I think
yeah.
everybody on this call, including the person who asked this question, their universities have subscriptions. The person who asked the question, I know for a fact his university has a subscription to Pivot.
Oh, good. Okay,
So
I don't
yeah,
know
so
Pivot. Tell me about it. Do you all like Pivot?
I've never used it. I just know that a lot of my clients have subscriptions to Pivot. That seems among my cohort, that seems to be the one like academic medical centers seem to have for private foundations. They use Pivot.
Oh, very good to
So
know.
yeah,
Great, great.
but
Yeah,
I've
so
never
definitely
used it.
make use of those. You can also use AI, ask
Mhm.
your AI, be very, very specific,
Yeah.
tailor those AI questions. There is a tech startup called GrantX that's out there right now. I was on the advisory board with them. I just left, but they are trying to develop a tool where um, using AI, it will search their database and very quickly come up with a list of appropriate funders for you. So I would keep your eye on them. I don't think they're developing and they're going to be really great, I think. But yeah, those databases are the places to find those.
So we still have questions coming in. Are you okay staying a little late, Natasha?
Sure,
Okay, I
absolutely.
can as well. I'm just going to start them from the top then because
Okay.
I'm getting a little confused about the ones that I've answered. This is not related to foundation. Should you first secure a full-time faculty appointment, tenure track or not, and then submit K application, or should you develop a K application and negotiate a full-time faculty appointment? I'm having a hard time transitioning from part-time to full-time faculty, given that I work remotely hybrid and there's no university close by where I live. So there are two
Mhm.
parts of this. One is the full-time, not full-time piece, and you're going to have a full-time position to apply for a K because you have to, with few exceptions, you're going to have to devote 80% time to the K submission, to a typical 5-year mentored K. Unless you do surgery or invasive cardiology, and then you can devote a lower percent effort. The other piece, so you're going to have a full-time position or an organization that is willing to host you in a full-time position. But having said that, it doesn't have to be a faculty position. And I just want to do a quick screen share to show you. This is an NIAID website that shows career stage. So this is for a PhD. You can see that there are Ks you can apply for without having had a faculty position. I don't know what kind of degree you have, but if you come down here, health professional track, clinicians, scientists, all these Ks, you can apply for them before you have a faculty position. So I will drop that into the chat for you, that URL. Hold on one second to everybody. Paste. Okay, I just dropped that in there. So there were two pieces of that. Hopefully I answered that okay. So the next one is not related to foundations. We're going through a tough period with NIH funding. My grant is under review now, and I'll get the score in a few days. If it's clearly fundable or not discussed, that's straightforward. But I'm concerned about a borderline score, one that might require revision. Given the current pay line, 24th percentile, I have two questions. Based on your experience, what score range might reasonably improve to a better than 24% with a strong revision? How much do scores typically improve? And the second part is, if I get a low score, resubmit, and then leave the institution, what happens to the grant? Can I retain any involvement, or does the institution take over? Thank you so much for your help. So the first part of this, you're viewing scores as a very predictable and linear process that you revise, and the scores improve, and um, that used to be more the case years ago when reviewers on standing study sections were invited to serve, in consecutive sessions. So let's say they're invited to serve 12 consecutive sessions on a study section. It used to be 3 per year for 4 years, and that was the standing arrangement. But because of the burden of that, reviewers are now typically allowed to opt out for one cycle per year, which means that the composition of the panel bounces around quite a bit. So if you resubmit, even if you resubmit quickly, you might not get all of the same reviewers, or even the composition of the panel could be quite a bit different. And of course, every June, a percentage of those people rotate off anyway. So scores can bounce around, and there isn't like a linear or predictable way in which scores improve or don't improve over time. Years ago, CSR and the director of extramural research crunched the numbers on this, and those data are available in my master resubmissions course if you want to look at them. But honestly, I don't even know if they're terribly predictive or helpful in the current situation. I feel like it's probably just, go over your summary statement with a mentor, and try to figure out if it makes sense to you to reapply. Keep in mind that if there's a concern about you scoring worse on the resubmission, there is a designator in ERA Commons where you can have multiple active applications. It's an MAA designator. So it protects you from a scenario where the A1 scores worse. It is possible for the Institute to go back and pick up the A0 for funding at the end of the year if they find themselves with extra money. So I don't know if that information is helpful. And then the other question was, what happens if you leave the institution? It really depends. I'm assuming that you're talking about being a PI on an R01. I don't know if you have a multi-PI, if there's a multi-PI plan and one PI is staying with the original institution, typically the project would stay with that person and they would become the sole PI or bring on a second multi-PI who isn't you. If you're the sole PI, sometimes you take the project with you. It really depends on the specific set of circumstances. So, in that instance, it's probably best to talk it over with the receiving organization because they're the ones who are incentivized to help you figure it out, right? The organization that may be losing the project is not incentivized to help you figure this out. This is a foundation one, Natasha. Should you reapply if you applied once and never got any feedback so you don't know what to work on?
Yeah, sometimes the foundation just doesn't have capacity to give you feedback, but you should definitely reapply. Just keep your eye on the website, on the mission, on the priorities. Really try to dig deeply and make sure that you are answering what they are asking. So you want to go over that application with a fine-tooth comb. Hopefully you can work with a consultant, who's an expert in this area to help you, but you want to make sure that your what, your why, your how, your who is really separated out. The biggest error that we see, it seems so simple, but people end up talking about the how and the what. They put the who in the what. They talk about how, their great experience of research in the what section doesn't belong there. You will get points off. They will put it to the side. So it's just really important to stick to those categories and understand what they're asking you. Absolutely reapply at least 3 rounds.
Okay. This one is not related to foundations. Meg, just curious if you would say NIH R01 typically takes a certain number of submission cycles on the average to get funded. So, yes, statistically, still, I think, this has always been true at NIH. It takes the R01s that are typically funded are rarely funded as a first submission. So, the data used to be a little more clear when they allowed 2 resubmissions, that it usually was funded on the 3rd submission. Now it's a little funky because you can take an unfunded A0, retool it, and then submit it as a new A0. So it's a little harder to figure out how many times people are submitting. But personally, I have clients who sometimes submit 3, 4, 5 times on an R01 to get it funded. And of course, in the meantime, you're you know, infusing money into the project from other sources, startup funds or campus grants or private foundations to make it a more competitive project. You're not simply resubmitting the same project over time. But yes, I would say it is still highly unusual for an R01, a very first submission to be funded first time around. It happens, but it doesn't happen often statistically. Not a foundation question. Meg, are you aware of any lexicon of terms that are taboo for NIH publications and substitutions? So I think you're talking about the forbidden terms that were published in the New York Times in early March. I think that's what you're talking about. And if people want that URL, I'm happy to give it to them. So I just want to, people have gotten really bent out of shape about this list of terms. It's a nonsensical list of terms that includes like crazy things like women, like as a taboo term, like it's carried to a nonsensical extreme. I just want to emphasize that this is not a list. This was a list that was put together by a group of reporters who took these list of taboo terms from that were leaked or in memos or from a variety of sources across agencies, not even limited to DHHS. It certainly isn't a list that was put out by NIH. So you have to kind of look at that list with a critical eye and recognize that this is not NIH putting out a list of forbidden terms that you absolutely cannot use on an application. The list is, concerning. And we don't really know how reviewers or program officers, what kind of latitude they're going to have in funding things because we have almost no summary statement examples that have come out since this administration has taken office. So we don't have a lot of data points on how any of this is going to look, but the thing that I tell people is to try to look at that with a critical eye, that list. There are obviously trigger terms that you are going to have trouble, if you're doing a DEI project, it's unlikely to get funded at NIH these days. That is probably a fact at the moment. But stem cells is on the list, or women, or obviously, if you're not doing something, the list is nonsensical. So try to use some critical judgment and avoid using words that are clearly trigger words for this administration in high profile areas like the Ames page, the title, the abstract. Okay, let's see. I did that one. Um, do you have any potential foundations for oral health, preventive health database driven, population based research? Wow, that is a multi hyphenate phrase.
I would definitely go for your dental insurance company. So corporations also have foundations attached to them. We won Delta Dental for a university client, so for oral health. So you can definitely look for your Delta dental insurance. Companies or pharmaceutical companies that do anything dental, they may have foundations attached to them. So always look on those websites. You can literally just Google a foundation, the name of a pharmaceutical company and add the word foundation and see if they have a foundation. But again, you'd have to go into those foundation search databases. For anyone who's asking me, do you know a foundation that funds this or that? So we do, as I said, everything from, Department of Labor to science to any, we run the gamut, everything except NIH. I would have to go to a database to answer those questions. So usually can't tell you. It's lucky this time that I'm saying Delta Dental, but usually I won't be able to have that kind of answer. I would have to search to find it.
Another foundation question: should we be conscious of limiting DEI language in foundation grant applications as we now must be for government grants?
Well, they'll be very explicit. So a lot of foundations are welcoming to DEI
Right,
language. The
exactly.
problem is if you get awarded, are you going to incorporate DEI into your website, into your marketing materials? And will that get you in trouble if you're also trying to go after federal grants? So that, I think, is what awardees really have to think very, very careful about. The private foundations, maybe not corporate, but private foundations, I'm seeing a lot of maybe not using DEI language, but they're welcoming to those kinds of projects. It's just, is it going to conflict with your federal? Should it be awarded? You'd have to talk with the funder to find out, could you use different kinds of language when it comes to marketing the win and publicizing it? That would be my advice. These are strange times for sure.
Strange times indeed.
Yeah.
Can a demoted research faculty to the research scientist and research engineer positions still be eligible to apply for a grant and service PI on NIH and private foundation grants? So I'll take the NIH part and then I'll hand it off to you for the private foundation part. So NIH has no requirements, believe it or not, for you don't have to have any kind of specific kind of title or position to apply for anything. But of course, you do have to have space to do the application, to carry out the work. You have to have an organization that's willing to sponsor the work, and you have to have the expertise and publications and collaborations to make the work feasible. Usually the sticking point is whether your organization allows it, because they are actually the ones who are applying for the application on your behalf. And if they're not willing to host you to be a PI on that particular application, then it's a non-starter. So you really have to check with your organization in this instance. What about for foundations?
Um, it shouldn't matter. I mean, really what you have to show is that you have the qualifications to do the job. Do you have the experience? Do you have the expertise? They don't really care about your job title so much as your expertise.
Okay, for the foundation funding, usually how many applicants, like 50% in with a question mark in parentheses, have prior interaction with the funding agency? I've never reached out before the application. Just curious if no prior interaction applies to most applications.
That's a really, really good question. Some foundations will say, like Hearst Foundation, they own only 20% of their awardees every year go to new awardees. The others are refunded. So if you're lucky, your foundation will state how many are new awardees versus what percent do they award that are returning. If you use a subscription search database like Foundation Search, they actually will show you what awards have been given to which organizations for the last 10 years or so. And there you just you can see if they're repeat funders or if they're unique new funders. But generally there's no other way to tell. But Foundation Search gives really nice data on each of the funders. What percent of their funding goes to which of their priority areas, who were their previous awardees, what the projects were that were previously funded, who's on their board of directors, how those board of directors are linked to other foundations, because you can follow them on LinkedIn. They give foundations, I don't work for them, not getting a kickback, but I am paying for their subscription, and I do think it's a good one.
Great. Okay. Somebody asked me to share the URL for the Forbidden Terms, the New York Times article. I just did that, so that's in the chat. Another one asking me to share the list in the chat, which is done now. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is
yes,
welcoming
welcoming. Yeah. They're doing a lot of equity work, even more now. They just posted some new ones that have to do with equity.
Certain foundations, Alzheimer's Association, require full-time appointment, and I couldn't apply as a part-time faculty.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, thanks for flagging that.
Let's see. As federal is not going to fund vaccine-related project, will foundations still support this kind of project, given that these kinds of projects may not yield a federal grant?
Yeah, it really is it depends on the foundation. So when you go to your search databases, it's going to give you choices of keywords that you can search for. It won't get as specific as vaccine, so you'd have to choose health. And then you'd have to look at previous funders to see if they have funded that kind of research before. So you'll have to do a little bit of digging to find out. It's reasonable, I think, that private foundations like Gates or someone else might fund vaccine research because the feds aren't funding it. I could definitely foresee that some of the major foundations will shift in that direction because we care what's going to happen in 4 years, right?
Right. And that was one of the things that I was going to say. I also wonder if there are opportunities to collaborate with foreign entities on some of this work because they don't necessarily have the restrictions that we currently have on this. I say that as somebody who worked on human embryonic tissue when I was in graduate school, and I cooperated with entities outside the U.S. because it was problematic in the U.S. So
we're doing that with one of my clients. We're looking at the German Research Colloquium. It's called the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, and we're looking at them because the feds are no longer funding this particular funding opportunity. So they're looking to partner with an organization in Europe. That is definitely a way to consider going. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it might be a topic for a future GE because you have some knowledge of that, and I have another colleague who does a lot of work with European funding organizations, particularly in Italy.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that might be something for us to do as well.
Yeah.
I hate social media. Can I avoid posting online and be successful with foundation funding?
Write a lovely letter. Is there nothing better than getting a handwritten note in the mail or calling someone on the phone? When I call program officers on the phone, 9 times out of 10, they pick up. No one calls anymore. So yeah, pick up the phone, write a handwritten note. Absolutely. If you hate social media, protect your mental health, go the old-fashioned route. It's perfectly fine.
Are these only U.S. foundations, or are you seeing external European as well?
So there are definitely European foundations as well. We're looking at a couple of them right now. In Germany, I mentioned the German Research Colloquium, and then there's also another one that funds African studies. One of my clients is doing that. So we're looking at others. I don't have a mechanism set up to do those searches right now. It's something that I am exploring and looking into. So let's keep in touch and share information. That goes back to what Meg just said about possibly doing another session on foreign funders. So bizarre for American researchers.
I know.
To have to look
it's
for
usually
foreign
the other
funders.
way around, right?
Yeah.
It's
so strange.
These are really odd times. But having said that, I would like to, remind people anytime you think of a topic or a topic that you'd like us to cover and ask the grant writing expert and/or a person you'd like to see come back. We have certainly inundated Natasha with questions. This was really great. Please let us know. Meg@BouvierGrant.com. I'm always happy to hear from people. I think we have finally made it to the bottom of the list of questions. And I think I'm going to have to, we are routinely running over now on these sessions. So I think I'm going to have to extend the time. I started out doing 30 minutes, but there are more people joining and more questions. So I may have to go to 45 or an hour. So I'll just let people know the upcoming topics for May. We have sessions on May 14th and May 28th. Those are going to just, as always, be the Q&A for Cycle 2 applications. On May 14th, I'll be coming from you live from Los Angeles, where I will be taking care of my first grandchild who is just born. So I have a grandson,
Congratulations.
Asa Gabriel. He is healthy. Our daughter's healthy. So very joyful work to be done. So I will surely be sharing pictures of him. And then in June, we have Emily Clemens coming back on June 11th to talk about the CDMRP portfolio, an often overlooked opportunity for medical research funding. And I just I slotted in a topic on June 25th. What is a rebuttal? How and why do I write one? Because I am finding that I'm writing a lot of rebuttals right now, which, there have always been rebuttals, but there seems to be an uptick in them. And I think it's because there's so much uncertainty at the federal funding level at NIH. People are uncertain about the budget. And so, anyway, I thought that would be a useful topic. I did have a question about how to write the project summary and project narrative. I'm going to save that for another time. I'll just suffice it to say, if people want me to talk about that next session, I will. But these are not mission critical sections of an NIH application. I dare say most reviewers don't even look at them. So don't spend a lot of time on that 30-line project summary and 3-sentence project narrative. The main thing to know about the two of them, particularly the summary, is that it's going to go in a database if you're funded. So you don't want it to be you don't want anything sensitive in there. That's one thing to think of. And I usually whittle it down from the Ames page. If people want to know more about that, I'll talk about it next time. We're getting some nice appreciation for Natasha. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. Really appreciate Natasha's insights. Anyway, that's it for today's session. Natasha, for sure, we will have you back. The people really had lots of good questions for you. This is obviously a really hot topic. And if people would like us to do a session on foreign funders for American biomedical researchers, I'm happy to put that together. I'm getting some thumbs up for that. I can think of 2 people off the top of my head, including Natasha, to have back. The other one would be David Widmer, who has connections. David and I are both of Italian descent, so he does a lot of work there. So we'll be happy to put that together. And that's it for today. So I will see you guys on May 14th from Los Angeles with my grandson. And Natasha, as always, it's just such a great pleasure to have you on. Anybody who wants to work with Natasha, her information's in the chat. She is smart and professional and just terrific. So I can't recommend her enough. And, the best of luck to all of you. We're rooting for you. Lots of people are cheering you on, and we're all anxious to do what we can to help you guys during what is a really the most challenging time, I think, of anybody's recent memory. So as the French would say, courage, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Natasha. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.